Welcome to the Cold and Dark Startup Tutorial. In this lesson, you'll perform the startup of the F-14B upgrade Tomcat from Cold and Dark on the carrier as the pilot. A prerequisite for this lesson is a familiarity with the controls and indicators of the pilot cockpit, which you should have gained from studying the aircraft manual. This lesson assumes that you have no experience on the older versions of the Tomcat. We will go through an extremely abbreviated interior inspection procedure, the full pre-start procedure, the full engine start procedure, and the post-start procedure for carrier operations, until step 26. As you'll notice, many steps during the startup are system tests, which you can always bypass by pressing spacebar during the explanations. The tests are not necessary because in DCS, the aircraft is spawned in a perfect condition. All such steps are introduced with the phrase system test in the on-screen text of the DCS window. Considering you set the system status correctly, you can always skip the instructions by pressing spacebar, although for many steps it's better to listen carefully before taking action. Press spacebar when you're ready for startup. As you might know, the F-14BU has a pneumatic engine startup system, and as it also lacks an APU, we have to order the plane captain to connect the ground air supply. We also have to order him to hook up the ground electric power. Use the communication menu under category F8, Ground Crew, and the following key bindings: F8, F2, F1 for the ground electric power, and F8, F5, F1 for the ground air supply. Press spacebar once ground electric power and ground air supply are connected.
Copy. Ground power is now on.
Chief, connect ground air supply.
Copy. Ground air supply is now connected.
Adjust your seat height according to your body size. This is especially important for VR users. Use key bindings, seat adjustment down, and seat adjustment up to raise or lower the seat according to your needs. Press spacebar when you are sitting comfortably. Switch on the oxygen to your mask. Visually check that the wings are in the oversweep position, and also verify that the emergency wing sweep handle is in the oversweep position, which is the farthest back position. Check that the white over flag is visible on the wing sweep indicator. Press spacebar to confirm. Set the hydraulic transfer pump switch to off. The guard must be up and the switch set to off. We've now reached the pre-start procedure. To allow communication with the ground crew with the canopy closed later on, set the following on your ICS panel: volume knob as desired, amplifier set to norm, function selector set to hot mic. Press spacebar to confirm. Ask Gesture to initiate the startup using the gesture communication wheel. Use key bindings toggle menu and left control 3. The first step on his list will be to check communication. Respond that you can hear him by again using the gesture communication wheel. Use key bindings toggle menu and left control 4. Gesture will also begin to start up and initialize some systems in his cockpit and will eventually tell you to arm your ejection seat. But please do not arm your seat yet. Press the spacebar when you've done the ICS check.
Roger, okay. ICS comm check. Okay.
Check that the landing gear position indicator indicates all down and that the transition light is off. Press spacebar to confirm.
I think you haven't armed your ejection seat.
Check all warning lights by pulling up the master test switch with a right click, rotate it to the LTS position with the left click, and then push it down with another right click. Verify that all warning, caution, and advisory lights illuminate. Coordinate with the Rio to check his lights. Use the already illuminated indications to set the brightness of the ACM panel and the indexer lights to a suitable level. The lighting controls are located on the master light panel on the right side. Press spacebar to continue. Now lift the master test switch and rotate it to the fire detection/extinguish position and push it down. Check that the left fire and right fire lights below the ACM panel illuminate and that the green go and red no-go lights on the master test panel also illuminate. Press spacebar to confirm. Next, lift and rotate the master test switch to the instrument position and push it down to check if the flight instruments show the following indications. RPM reads 96%, EGT reads 960 degrees Celsius, fuel flow reads 10,500 pounds per hour, AOA indicates 18 plus or minus 5, wing sweep indicates 45 degrees plus or minus 2.5 degrees, fuel quantity reads 2,000 plus or minus 200 pounds, and the RIO should also confirm that his indicator displays the same fuel quantity. The L fuel low and R fuel low caution lights illuminate. The L stall and R stall warning lights left and right of the HUD will be flashing. The oral stall warning sounds several times, and the oxygen quantity reads 2 liters. Press spacebar to confirm. Finally, make sure that the master test switch is set to off. Press spacebar to continue. Arm the ejection seat. Use a key binding, toggle arm ejection seat. Jester should have already told you to do so. Once you've armed the seat, Jester will close the canopy and tell you about it, and then continue with his startup. Recommend you tuck those fingers under your pits. Press the spacebar to continue.
Okay, ready to start.
Check the closed canopy. This is a good moment to adjust the mirrors according to your requirements. Press the spacebar to continue. Now, check and set the following on the VDIG R bezel, the former ACM panel. Sidewinder cooling to off, missile preparation to off, missile mode to norm. Press spacebar to continue. Verify that the emergency stores jettison push button light is out. Press the spacebar to confirm. Verify that the ladder light on the caution and advisory indicator is also out. See the picture to see what it looks like if it's illuminated. Press the spacebar to confirm. Wait for Jester's confirmation that he's ready to start the engines. Most likely he's probably already given it. Press spacebar when he reports it's ready. Confirm that the air source switch is set to off. Press the spacebar to confirm. We've now reached the engine start procedure. You can then move the emergency flight hydraulic switch to low. Check that the on flag is visible in the emergency flight low hydraulic pressure window. Also verify the control over the horizontal and rudder control surfaces on the surface position indicator. Press the spacebar to confirm. Next, move the emergency flight hydraulic switch to high. Check that the on flag is present in the emergency flight high hydraulic pressure window. Again, verify control over the control surfaces on the surface position indicator. The deflection rate should be higher than in low. Press spacebar to confirm. Make sure that the emergency flight hydraulic switch is set to auto. Check that the off flag is present in both emergency flight low and high hydraulic pressure window. And finally, close the guard. Press the spacebar to confirm. Now time to prepare yourself for the engine start, so let's quickly review the necessary steps before we start them. First, once you set the engine crank switch to left or right, it'll automatically be held in that position initially. Second, when the RPM reaches 20%, check for oil and hydraulic pressure and that the start/valve caution light illuminates. Third, when at 20% RPM, move the selected engine throttle to idle to actuate the ignition system and open fuel flow. Engine light off should occur within 5 to 15 seconds. EGT should peak around 40 to 50% RPM and should not exceed 890 degrees Celsius, which would constitute a hot start. Fourth, at 50% RPM, the engine crank switch will disengage automatically. Note, if the engine crank switch doesn't return to center after 50% RPM, set it to off manually before 60% RPM. If the start/valve caution light stays on, tell the plane captain to disconnect the air supply. Press spacebar when you've understood the procedure. Right-click the engine crank switch. When RPM reaches 20%, move the right throttle to idle. Let the RPM rise until the RPM value stabilizes. Notice the right generator caution light turning off at 59% RPM. Notice the right fuel pressure caution light turning off before idle RPM is reached. After the engine is stabilized, the instruments at idle RPM should read engine speed, RPM, between 62% and 78%, exhaust gas temperature, or EGT, between 500 degrees and 600 degrees, fuel flow between 950 and 1400 pounds per hour, nozzle position 100%, oil pressure 25 to 50 psi 15 minimum, and check the flight hydraulic pressure showing 3000 psi. Press spacebar to confirm your checks. Order the ground crew to disconnect external power. Key bindings are the following: /F8, F2, F2. When done, press spacebar to continue.
Chief, turn off the ground power.
Copy. Ground power is now off.
Left-click the engine crank switch, but leave the throttle in off position for the moment. Wait to see that the combined hydraulic pressure reaches 3000 psi. Then switch the engine crank switch back to off. Press spacebar when done. Now, with the left engine spooled down again, switch the hydraulic transfer pump switch to normal. This should pressurize the combined side from the right engine and maintain a pressure between 2400 and 2600 psi. The needle will move slowly, so be patient. Note that if the right engine does not pressurize the combined side within 10 seconds, immediately set the hydraulic transfer pump switch to shut off. This situation caused by a malfunction in the hydraulic system, which you cannot fix, and it requires you to hop into a spare jet. Press spacebar to confirm. Set the hydraulic transfer pump switch to shut off. Next, start the left engine the same way you started the right one. As a reminder, the engine instruments should read engine speed, RPM, between 62% and 78%, exhaust gas temperature, or EGT, between 500 degrees and 600 degrees, fuel flow between 950 and 1400 pounds per hour, and the nozzle position should be at 100%. Oil pressure should be at 25 to 50 psi with a 15 psi minimum. This time, check the combined hydraulic pressure is reaching 3000 psi and press the spacebar when done. With both engines running, order the ground crew to disconnect the air supply. Key bindings are the following: /F8, F5, and F2. Press the spacebar when done.
Chief, disconnect ground air supply.
Copy. Ground air supply is now disconnected.
Cycle the air source switch, first to left engine, followed by right engine, and finally to both engines. Finally, set the hydraulic transfer pump switch to normal and close the guard. It's now time to take care of Jester and the INS alignment. The INS alignment process can take up to 8 minutes depending on conditions, so it's best to start it as soon as possible after the engine start. It requires the parking brake set to on. Note that the alignment will stop if the brake is released. To see how the alignment is progressing, turn on the HSD and set it to TID repeat. Jester would normally go for a so-called fine alignment, but if required, you may change that. Once you see data on the HSD and TID mode, you can open up the Jester wheel and select the desired INS alignment quality. For today, please let Jester align it fine. You will also see that Jester enters the required parameters for INS alignment and also the alignment mode. When the INS alignment starts, the TID repeater shows a status bar on top of the screen with a diamond moving from left to right. The more right, the finer the align already is. The time already elapsed in the alignment phase is also shown. We're now free to continue our checklist. Press spacebar to continue. We have now reached the post-start procedure. Turn on the Stability Augmentation System, or SAS, by setting all 3 SAS switches to on: pitch, roll, and yaw. Now switch on the VDI and the HUD. The HSD should already be on. Next, we will check the Augmenter Fan Temperature Control, or AFTC. For this, set the left engine select switch to secondary and check that the left engine secondary light illuminates on the caution panel, and the left nozzle position indicator points below 0. Advance the left throttle slightly and check good engine response. Then set the switch back to primary and check that the caution light goes out, the nozzle position indicator again shows 100%, and then repeat the check for the right engine. Press the spacebar when done. Set the wing external transfer switch to position off. Next, let's take care of some other systems. Set the UHF function selector to both, set the TACAN function selector to T/R, turn on the radar altimeter by rotating the control knob, turn on the ICLS ARA63 power switch, and turn on and configure all displays as required. Press the spacebar to continue. Set pitch trim to 0. With no control input, it should read at 0 degrees on the surface's position indicator. Check it carefully. Press the spacebar to confirm. Erect the standby attitude gyro by clicking the control knob with the left mouse button, and then turn it with the right mouse button until the waterline is centered. The gyro should be erected at least 2 minutes before takeoff. Press spacebar to continue. Press the Master Reset push button. Now, extend the speed brake partially and retract it. Then extend it fully, and again, retract it. Check for a positive change on the stabilizers in order to verify that the automatic trim is working properly when the speed brake is extended. Press the spacebar to continue. Extend the refueling probe fully by setting the refuel probe switch to position all. Check for normal operation and that the red transition light illuminates when the probe is in movement. Finally, retract it by setting the switch position back to retract. Press spacebar to continue. On the radio altimeter, press the set knob to initiate the built-in test, abbreviated BIT. The display should indicate 100 feet and the green light should illuminate. Then release the knob. The display should then show 0 feet, the altitude low light should illuminate, and a warning tone should be heard by both pilot and RIO. Press spacebar when done. Check all displays for the desired mode. Typically the VDI repeats the HUD and the HSD repeats the PTID during that particular phase. Press spacebar when done.
We're ready to taxi.
Set both the cockpit and the HUD altimeters to the desired QFE or QNH values. For example, you could use QFE on the cockpit altimeter and QNH on the HUD altimeter. Then reset the cockpit altimeter by turning the small latch on the bottom to position reset until the red off flag disappears. Press spacebar when done. Validate the IMU heading on the HUD, the VDI, the HSD, and the BDHI. Cross-check them against known references and the standby compass. Note that until the INS alignment is complete, these displays show degraded information. Press spacebar when done. Check all flight instruments for normal readings. Press spacebar when done. Good. Jester has finished the alignment. This concludes the lesson. You are now free to perform a takeoff on Catapult 3 or 4. Here are the abbreviated checklists with the most important items. Don't miss them. Press spacebar to stop the music and remove this text from the screen.
Chief, remove the wheel chocks.
Copy. Wheel chocks are now removed.
Please wait until your aircraft is ready.
Welcome to the Cold and Dark Startup Tutorial. In this lesson, you'll perform the startup of the F-14B upgrade Tomcat from Cold and Dark on the carrier as the Rio. A prerequisite for this lesson is a familiarity with the controls and indicators of the Rio cockpit, which you should have gained from studying the aircraft manual. This lesson assumes that you have no experience on the older versions of the Tomcat. We will go through the pre-start procedure and the post-start procedure for carrier operations, but without actually starting the engines, as we can run all Rio systems using ground power and external cooling air. Considering you set the system status correctly, you can always skip the instructions by pressing spacebar, although for many steps it's better to listen carefully before taking action. Press the spacebar if you're ready for it. First, ask the ground crew to connect ground electric power and ground air supply. Usually this is done by the pilot, but today you're going to talk to the plane captain. Use the key-binding communication menu, followed by F8, F2, and F1 for ground electric power, and F8, F5, and F1 for ground air supply. Press spacebar when both supplies are connected.
Ground power is now on.
Chief, connect ground air supply.
Copy. Ground air supply is now connected.
Adjust your seat height according to your body size. This is especially important for VR users. Use key bindings, seat adjustment down, and seat adjustment up to raise or lower the seat according to your needs. When trying to change key bindings for the Rio, don't forget to select F-14 Rio after opening the control options window. Press spacebar to continue. Adjust the ICS volume to a comfortable level. As a good starting point, use an intermediate setting. Press spacebar to continue. Next, turn on the data link. Turn on the VHF radio by setting the mode selector to TR plus G. Switch on the oxygen to your mask. Check the current fuel quantity using the fuel totalizer. It should show nearly 16,200 pounds. Press spacebar to confirm. Adjust the console and instrument lighting by using the interior light control panel on the right side console. Press spacebar to confirm. During the lights test, which is actually performed by the pilot, check all caution, advisory, and ECM and DDI lights. Note that the data link needs to be on, which it currently is, to allow the DDI lights to illuminate. Press spacebar to inform the pilot that the test was successful.
Okay, lights test was successful.
Copy.
During the instrument test, which is actually performed by the pilot, observe your fuel counter decreasing to 2,000 pounds, and also check that the master caution light, the fuel low light, and the oxy low light illuminate. Report your readings to the pilot by pressing spacebar.
Okay, instrument test looking good.
Copy.
Arm your ejection seat by depressing the latch on top of the seat. Visually check that the latch on the pilot seat is also depressed. Confirm your checks by pressing spacebar. Inform the pilot that you will close the canopy by pressing spacebar, then close it. Use key binding toggle canopy.
I'm closing the canopy.
Roger that.
Now, after having accomplished the pre-start procedure, let the pilot know that you are ready to start by pressing spacebar.
Ready to start.
Roger that.
So far, so good. We've reached the engine start procedure. The pilot would normally start the engines now, and your job as Rio would be to monitor the pilot procedures and keep an eye on the external environment to ensure maximum safety during the engine start. Today we will move on by simply using the ground electric power and air supply. Press spacebar to continue. Ideally, make sure that the CDNU is off. Press spacebar to confirm. Make sure that the data link is still on. Press spacebar to confirm. For alignment of the IMU, we will use inertial data from the carrier's INS system, which is called Ship Inertial Navigation System, or short, SINS. Set the data link mode, switch to Canes/Waypoint. On an airfield, you would select TAC. Turn the nav mode knob to position CVA in order to start the alignment of the IMU. On an airfield, set the WCS switch to standby in order to power up the weapon control system. Then verify the green auto. Rotate the PTID knob to position auto. Set the liquid cooling switch to position AUG-9. The switch is located on the left side wall. If you had Phoenix missiles loaded on the jet, you would select the switch position AUG-9/AIM-54. Then please wait for the PTID to warm up. Press spacebar when you see the alignment status on the PTID. Now let's quickly check the alignment status. The PTID will show the INS alignment status bar. You see 4 vertical lines, or also called ticks. These ticks indicate the drift rate in nautical miles per hour if the alignment would stop at that tick. We have ticks for course align complete, which means only attitude data could be used then for 5 miles, for 3 miles, and for 1 mile, which represents fine align. Progression of the alignment is indicated by the caret in the form of a small V moving from left to right. The caret and the indications on top of the screen will change during the progress. When reaching the course align complete, the mark will transition into a diamond. The standby/ready indication on top of the screen will change to a standby indication, and the diamond will rest there for a few moments. The progress will then advance if you don't interrupt the alignment process, which, theoretically speaking, you could. For an example, situations where only attitude data is required and a quick takeoff is planned. The standby indication will stay on until reaching the 3 miles tick. It will then change back to standby/ready, indicating alert launch criteria, which is the minimum needed for guided Sparrow and Phoenix launches. When reaching the 1 mile tick, a dot will appear inside the diamond, indicating that fine align is complete. The digits below the status bar, from left to right, are the time elapsed since the start of alignment in minutes and seconds, the alignment quality expressed as drift in nautical miles per hour, the GPS figure of merit, or FOM. We will continue with our procedure now and leave the alignment running until it, hopefully, reaches fine align. Press spacebar to continue. Good. Let's continue. Insert the data cartridge into the slot of the mission data loader. The cartridge is located on top of the instrument panel. Then turn on the CDNU and wait until you see the display showing the start page, indicated by the label START in the top left corner. Normally, you would be required to enter some basic data into the CDNU, but since the CDNU will remember its last known position, you may simply check the data for correctness. For this, press line select key 1, which is the button associated with the label START, and check the coordinates of the aircraft's own position, the date and the time, whereas date and time are those set for the mission and not the real-life values. If everything is correct, press spacebar to continue. Next, set the IR/TV switch to IR/TV. Switch the TACAN EGI switch to EGI. Power up the radar warning receiver, or RWR. Turn the DECM knob to position standby. Turn the IFF master knob to position standby. Now let's change back to the CDNU and load the flight plan that was defined in the mission editor. The flight plan contains a few waypoints, and it's now up to you to load it. For this, simply follow your handwritten notes from the picture. It's actually not necessary and most probably not possible to activate the flight plan right now. This will be done later on. Press spacebar when the flight plan is loaded. Next, configure the controls on the DDD panel as required, which at this stage includes the WCS mode buttons, the range select buttons, the brightness knob, the erase knob, the pulse gain knob. Press spacebar to continue. Now configure the PTID as required. This includes the contrast and brightness settings, the data link settings, the jam strobe setting, the non-attack setting, and the launch zone setting. Press spacebar to continue. On the ALE-47 countermeasures panel, turn the mode knob to position standby. Next, check the alignment has reached the fine aligned tick indicated by a dot in the diamond. When you see it, turn the nav mode knob on the PTID to position INS and make sure that the standby/ready indication on the top left of the PTID has disappeared, which indicates a valid nav mode selection. You may then activate the flight plan on the CDNU by following the steps on your handwritten notes from the picture again. Press spacebar to confirm. The next few steps require you to check the following information: the bearing and distance to the destination waypoint, the own aircraft ground speed, and the magnetic variation. Press spacebar after your checks. Finally, direct the standby attitude indicator. Notify the pilot that you're ready to taxi by pressing spacebar.
Ready to taxi.
Roger that.
Good. You've finished the Rio cold start tutorial on the carrier. Feel free to further familiarize yourself with the Rio cockpit or exit the mission. This concludes the tutorial.